After burying myself at the end of the first week, I find myself in a familiar state of fatigue entering into the second week of the training block. I then battle to maintain my TSS for the rest of the block. Generally, I can complete the prescribed low-volume workouts, but I usually have to scale back my efforts on the group ride, or I have to cut out an aerobic ride. Generally, my TSS drops by about 5 to 10% each week during a block, which is not ideal. In fact, if anything, it does the opposite, right?
You'd want it to, yeah.
Yeah. So he says, would I get more out of my training if I exercised more restraint in that first week of a training block and saved something so I could train more consistently from week to week? As a general rule, at what point would it be worthwhile to exercise more constraint? And he gives an example like, if you start to experience X percentage drop in TSS, at this point, it's a good time to do it. So lots of questions, but they all revolve around the point of basically kind of getting ahead of yourself, right?
Yeah.
I'm a little perturbed by his use of the term familiar. I find myself in a familiar state of fatigue entering into the second week of a training block.
Not this again.
Yeah. I mean, come on, Stefan. But this mistake and this logic applies to so many things that we do that are high volume and are a big bump in what we're used to, like training camps, stage races, and training blocks. So if you've heard the term January hero, summertime zero, I mean, maybe they'll put a month on it, but the idea is that you're super fast now, but then you're not fast when it matters because, I mean, you rode that wave of fitness and you basically crashed into the shore. I mean, you took it too far, and it's an easy temptation. We've talked about it so many times because it happens really easily. It's so fun to be fast, and it's so easy to think if I'm this fast, I can get faster, and my goals are still months out. But if I'm this fast now, I can be so much faster than even my trajectory indicates.
Yeah.
So you just have to rein it in. I mean, we're looking for improvement that comes incrementally and consistently, right? We want little gains here and there. We're not looking for big gains all of a sudden and then plateaus or worse, declines.
Yes. There's definitely a lot of memes in this, right? Like, takes a test, gets a PR, suddenly like Strava KOMs are all mine, right? Like everyone, and you want to use your fitness because it's like fun. Like it's like a new toy. It's like I can do so much with this now. But there's something to be said, even psychologically, probably for holding yourself back like that.
Absolutely.
This is something that Brandon Need, our product manager, really fast racer, incredibly fast runner, triathlete, everything. And he always, if you look at his rides, he doesn't surge at the end. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He saves that for when it matters.
Yeah, he was the first one to demonstrate a really good example of that approach, the save your best performances for races. Because I always thought, you can have your best performances in a workout or in a training race, and you know that you can do that, and then everything is going to scale accordingly. So if you know you can go that hard, then when it comes race day, you won't have to push yourself that hard. It's not the strongest logic, but it's the way most people approach it. And then Brandon took it from a different approach and makes it work really well. And it opened my eyes to a whole different way of going about it. Yeah,
for sure. And I feel like the other side of it too is a lot of us, we kind of run into this mindset where we feel like, all right, now that I have fatigue, now, and we've talked about this before, like now that I have fatigue, now is like when, like, this is good. This is where I'm at. And fatigue is just good. And this means that I'm training and improving. But fatigue for fatigue's sake is not training, productive training.
No, and it's a fine line between what's productive and what isn't. I mean, because they're almost synonymous. The point at which you push a little past and you start to you start to suffer ill effects, and the point just prior to it are so close together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's something that... I feel like this is perpetuated a lot of the time too, because people are proud of the hard work they do, so then they share the fatigue and make sure they share that with others, right?
Yeah, the harder the better. It's like a badge of honor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it can be this like self-perpetuating cycle that just trends you downward, where you end up just running yourself down and down and down. And as in this case, Stefan is saying, a familiar state of fatigue. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way. Yeah. So I think that like the whole thing though is you just have to have like goals, right? Like, and it depends on what your goal is here.
But I mean, goals are the end point, though. I mean, you have the process along the way too. And, and what I see far too often is someone vacillates between good workouts and bad workouts. They do this workout where they go a little extra and they bury themselves a little extra because they were feeling good. And to some extent, that's not a bad way to train. But if the next workout's always a bad workout after that, and it takes you too long to get back to have another good workout, that's an issue. I'd like it to be good workout, great workout, bad workout, good workout. I mean, it can't be so lopsided,
Right.
or it can't even be equal. If you're up and then you're down, you're up and then you're down, not getting it quite right. You should have more up days than down days.
Yeah, like an ideal experience for me when moving through a training plan is when I feel like I can do all of my workouts like they're all manageable.
Every once in a while, if you don't have a succession of workouts that all work, I mean, if you like a string of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, then again, you're probably not getting it quite right.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be completely crushed after every hard workout.
For sure. And this is like the big danger of incorporating group rides and everything else. And
Yes.
because it's interesting, like you
especially
pointed out,
dangerous.
Stefan, that like you said that it may be too much TSS, but then you really get back and you say, but I also probably go a little too hard on the group ride, that sort of thing. And I can't help but think that like if you were more measured, perhaps even about how you went throughout the week with the other workouts and more disciplined with that, I bet you'd be able to actually maybe hold on a little bit longer with that group ride and not put yourself in a hole.
And also take a look at why you're doing those group rides on the weekend. I mean, is it just to, kind of flex your ego? Are you out there because you want to be exposed to other
Cyclists
people's
wouldn't do
race
that.
tactics?
Yeah.
Do you want to have someone else dictate the pace and you have to hang on for dear life and figure out what that's like so that it benefits your racing expertise? Or are you just going out there because it's a fun thing to do, even though you recognize it's probably going to set your training back?
Yeah.
I mean, there's benefits to all of that, but it has to
Absolutely.
be on balance, right? Like I love incorporating group rides in my training because they are fun. So that kind of keeps the motivation level up. Riding with other people for me is really energizing. So again, that's keeping the motivation level up. And I do like it's a different cognitive load again. So you can work on process goals like positioning. But you also, I mean, it doesn't have to be about dropping people or hanging on longer. It can also be about you can focus on other process goals amazingly.
You can. You can use the same group ride on a weekly basis to focus on different things.
Yes.
You don't always have to accept that you're going to go out there and completely bury myself on this particular ride and come back into next week flat because of it.
Right.
Go out knowing, I mean, how many times have you done this? I honestly don't know, but he's clearly repeated this issue, so he knows what's going to happen. So maybe occasionally skip one. Maybe know that I've got a big block coming up next week and that block is more important than anything I'm going to get out of this one weekend
Right.
ride. So I'm
Yes.
going to pass it up this week.
And if you really need that kind of shot in the arm of a social ride, but you know that you are tempted to go too deep, say on a certain climb, you can make the decision beforehand that you're only going to stay in the ride up to a certain point, and then you'll pull the plug. And then
remove the temptation.
Exactly. But make the decision beforehand so you're not, wishy-washy in the middle of the ride or beating yourself up because you're quote unquote quitting. I mean, you just make the decision that's going to be best for your training. And
Yeah,
that's
make
okay.
it beforehand.
And I don't
right?
even think
Yeah,
it sounds
that's
like
good.
making excuses if you tell your buddies
No.
that I'm going to bail out before that climb because I always go too hard and it affects my following week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody who appreciates improvement in performance and effective training will appreciate that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's never let one day throw off a whole week, because if a whole week gets thrown off, that throws off a whole training block, and then that whole
yeah.
training block throws off everything else, and
Yeah, it's a
it's
domino
a shame
effect.
to just let one ride do that. But it's very much within our vein of we all do that,
It's,
right?
it's
Oh, yeah.
completely
It's
understandable.
so
I think it's so
easy
easy
to
to
do.
talk on this because we've all done it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we'll probably do it again.
So I was in the planning meeting, and
Yeah.
I have a different approach
Okay.
to this.
Nice.
So, Stefan,
Nate's a maverick this episode. We have no clue. Loose
It's gonna
cannon.
be amazing. Well, okay. So, are you improving through each one of these blocks?
yeah.
Are you happy with that improvement?
Right.
If that's the case, and these like group rides are things that help motivate you, like this is one reason too I signed up for Dirty Kansas. Having a closer big goal than like a year out. Sometimes having that like lots of little goals
Yes.
makes the training easier in the week. And if you take that away, like Brandon's the opposite. Brandon can he can do 1 or 2 A races the whole year, his only 2 races the entire year, and be totally happy with it.
Yeah, he might do like 1 or 2 C races, right?
Yeah.
And that's like
I
it.
can't do that.
Like no B, just straight to A.
So if you're improving and this increases motivation and consistency, and it sounds like you're still doing your other rides, you're still hitting them. Keep doing it. Like
No, I get it.
I wouldn't change it to be like a perfect TSS build and then maybe lose some motivation. So just think about that's a good
good point. We should have asked that question initially. Are you still on an upward trajectory? Are you happy with your progress? Is everything panning out the way you want it to? Then probably don't need to change anything. If, however, you think maybe you could get a little more out of your training if you just toned it down on these rides or skipped one here and there, it's worth consideration.
You just have to. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say. I mean, it wasn't just the group rides either. He was talking about going more and harder on some of his
Yes.
workouts. So I would say like that's the first place to dial back, because I think the group rides provide a lot more benefit than just like tacking on some extra TSS to a planned workout.
Yeah, that's right. We're pinning this all on the group rides, and it's not the group rides that are the only culprits, because he's also out there cross-country skiing. He's also out there doing easy rides, which may not actually be easy rides.
Right. That might be the lowest hanging fruit, right? Like really identify how easy your easy rides are. I mean, they should be really easy. When I first moved to Connecticut, the terrain is really kind of a sawtooth profile. So it's really, I mean, there's nothing flat. You're either going uphill or downhill, which made my recovery rides really hard. And my coach gave me a heart rate ceiling. Couldn't let my heart rate go over 120. I had to go really slow up some of those climbs. I mean, shockingly slow. To make sure that it was an actual recovery ride. So, dropping that floor of what constitutes easy might be some low hanging fruit. And then, just do your workouts as planned. And then to Nate's point, I mean, if the group rides are providing that extra motivation, that's probably not all a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. Especially if the goal for him is not necessarily to peak for some sort of A event or anything like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's doing it right. But if he has something that he's building toward, that's where you step back. So
my husband's a really smart guy, and I remember I got really sick and I was coming back from illness, and it's one of those things where you're sort of trying to like feel your way and figure out like, am I well enough? And I was feeling better, and I was really chomping at the bit to get back on the bike. And so I remember telling him, all right, today I feel a lot better. I think I'm going to get back on the bike. And he's like, well, if you feel a lot better, maybe you shouldn't get back on the bike for another day or two. And I just looked at him like he was nuts. And he was like, well, it's not just about being healthy again. It's also having the hunger to be on the bike. Like if you hold off for 1 or 2 days, when you get back to the bike, that fire is going to be burning really hot, right? So that's another consideration as well. And that goes back to the consistency, like holding yourself back a little bit to hit the consistency is probably more important. And then also that mentality of, if you're just tacking on a little bit more, and it's tanking your motivation, and then you're needing to add in these group rides to bring your motivation back up. I mean, that sounds like a bit of a vicious cycle if that's what's happening.
if you like this video, subscribe to our channel and let us know with a thumbs up down below.
If you didn't like us, give us a thumbs down, but let us know what we could do to improve in the comments.
Absolutely. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, you should head over to TrainerRoad.com. It works.
True story.
It's true. Nate used to be slow, and now he's fast.
Sort of fast. Not as fast as you.
Still fast, Nate.